Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the Cognio platform. We're going to give you a general introduction to the whole platform and tell you what makes Cognio so special. As I mentioned, I am Ben Olswang, the VP of Engineering and Product Management at Symmetrics. And just start with a little housekeeping to start. This is the first of our upcoming webinar series. First one today, Introduction to Cognio Platform. We're going to cover the overview of the platform and the software, what makes Cognio so special. And we'll be following that up next month with the deep dive into the design ops control and design software for Cognio. And that'll be much more focused on the software. And then we're going to have a webinar in May talking about remote monitoring and management of Composer systems. So something for the Cognio users and the Composer users. For those of you who don't have a lot of history with Symmetrics or haven't visited us in a while, thanks for joining us. For those who are avid Symmetrics customers, we're happy to have you as well, of course. Just a quick background on Symmetrics. Symmetrics was started in the 70s, really focused on recording products. In the 80s, we morphed into broadcast, really being an integral part of pretty much every radio station in the 80s and 90s. And then in the early thousands, we transitioned again into commercial AV market. We've always been an innovator, a leader in technology, adopting new technologies like Dante and digital audio processing. And we that is really ingrained at our core at Symmetrics, being an innovator of crafted products that empower consultants and integrators to design advanced communication and collaboration systems with confidence. We love challenges, and Cognio is our next challenge. So Cognio is a brand new next generation AV and control platform, rethinking how AV and control can be done. It makes up new hardware, new firmware, new control and design software. Everything is new from the ground up with Cognio. And we have redefined what AV and control platforms can mean in today's world. So what is Cognio? What are those differences? What makes it so special and so unique? Well, it's actually right there in the name. So it comes from two words: cognition, smart, knowledge, information, and IO, input and output. And Cognio mashes those together with the concept of smart processing in every product of the Cognio platform. One of our internal code names was smart endpoints, the concept that every product of Cognio is smart and adds processing to your system. And that one difference is what makes Cognio so special, and everything fans out from that. So let's just look at a typical system today where you have a smart DSP or core or engine. Manufacturers, we all use different words, but generally you have this smart product and then simple endpoints. And by simple, I just mean they don't do much on their own, right? If you have an IO endpoint, Dante endpoint, or a control screen, without that engine, that processor, that core, they really don't do anything on their own. And our perspective was, let's change that. Let's make every product in the Cognio platform smart. Let's distribute the processing across all Cognio devices and see what benefits we can deliver to the customers and users. And those benefits are huge. Most notably with a distributed system is you have way more capabilities in every device. And because every device can do all of the things, and we'll talk about that in detail, you generally need less hardware. It also drastically improves scalability. You can scale from small to large, any application without any complexity. Every product has a control engine built in, so you have control everything from everywhere. And our design software rethinks how you work, um, throwing away traditional workflows and assumptions, allowing you to design smarter, faster, and easier, and create beautiful control screens that your customers will love to interact with. So let's walk through these five um, um, uh, benefits today here, starting with more capabilities from less hardware. So here's an example of a small room and how you might achieve it with any system today, whether it's Composer from us or QSys or Biamp. We all work very similarly where you have a centralized processor and these endpoints. But the key knowledge is you don't actually need a processor, you need processing. So that processing can be achieved by any product in the system. And so in Cognio, we move that processing out of a dedicated product and into one of the other Cognio products, in this case, the touchscreen. For a small room, there's plenty of processing in the chips that are inside of our touchscreens. The capabilities of modern silicon is so vast these days that we can do so much that we don't need a dedicated piece of hardware to do DSP or control processing for a small room. We can reuse the other processors that are inherently in the system. And this is scaled throughout the Cognio project line. So let me explain how we achieve that at a lower level. So our existing products are all based around having dedicated hardware for each function. We might have a piece of hardware for AEC, a piece of hardware for DSP or for Dante or for control or USB. And that served us well, but it really hampers how you scale a device. If you want to add more features, or we as a manufacturer want to add more features, it requires us to make hardware options to achieve that. And in Cognio, we've changed that. Instead of having dedicated processors, we have a general purpose processor that does all of this functionality. And in Cognio, this might be an Intel processor, an ARM, and every Cognio product, not just traditional DSPs, has this general purpose processor in it, and means that every Cognio product in the Cognio platform can run the same Cognio operating system. So all of our touchscreens, our Cognio endpoints, processors, remotes, we all run the Cognio OS on them. And every product running Cognio OS can have access to the same OS features. And that includes, at a high level, audio processing and control processing. So every Cognio product can have open architecture DSP up to 96K, software Dante, AEC, recording and playback paging. Every Cognio product has control processing, such as a built-in web server allowing you to bring your own device for control, automation, third-party drivers. It can run Lewis scripts. It can be controlled from an external control product using our JSON API. Every Cognio product has access to all of these features. The only difference is how much of each feature each Cognio product has. So this illustrates two different Cognio products. On the left is a product that has a very large processor represented by a large circle. And on the right is a smaller product with a smaller processor represented by the smaller circle. And then you can see within each circle, we have the ability to subdivide the capabilities, those features within that pool of processing. So on the left, you can see we've used a huge amount of it for DSP, traditional signal processing. Where on the right, we've more evenly distributed the capabilities within that product. And that can be dynamic too. It doesn't have to be something we set at design time when we build a product. Can be something that's configurable in the field. So let's say you're designing a system with a product on the right, but you don't need AEC. Well, we can allow you to turn off AEC, giving you that processing for more capabilities. The Cognio OS allows all of this. So, to review the platform, all Cognio products can have all of our firmware features. All of our products are differentiated by their hardware capabilities, and those firmware features scale based on the capacity of the general purpose processor we use in each product. And this makes it really easy for us to add new product types and to add new features to the OS. And when we do add new features to the OS, all Cognio products will be able to take advantage of those new features because they all run the same operating system. So I forgot to mention earlier on, if you have any questions as we go, we're going to have Q&A at the end, but please don't hesitate to type your questions into the Q&A area of the webinar platform. And as you type those questions, we'll make sure we answer them. We have a lot of Symmetrix employees standing by to answer questions as we go. And any that need to be answered live on the stream, we'll save those to the end. So if you have questions, type those into the Q&A now, please. All right. So we've talked about the platform. Let's talk about scalability. Now, we just sort of mentioned scalability within a product, within a processor. But scalability to Cognio means the ability for you to use the same concepts, products, and software for all of your applications and sizes of systems. You get to learn once and use everywhere, whether it's a school or house of worship or transportation or theater. All of these can use the same platform and same skills to scale from those needs. So the simplest example starts again with a small room. I have a venue that has one small room. It would look like this. I'd have a touch screen to do the processing and a couple endpoints. But what if it has two small rooms? Well, I can just duplicate that with a second touch screen and second endpoints for that room. Each room can be treated as two separate entities, even though it's represented by a single site. And in the software side, it's all handled in a single site file. And this scales up to a building where in a traditional building, using traditional platforms like our own Composer platform, you would solve it like this, where every single room, in this case of a school, all of the I/O and control is in each room, but all of those send signals back to an equipment rack somewhere where you have a big server, in this case, our server D100, handling all the processing and then sending that back out to each individual room. Well, in Cognio, this can be achieved without the equipment rack because you can treat each individual room as a self-contained space, running its processing on a touchscreen or a small DSP that's right for that room. And this delivers a lot of benefits. One, you don't need to pay for that centralized server. You're utilizing processing that already exists in every room with the control touchscreen. And it means you have way less daunting net audio traversing the network because everything is handled locally. The only thing that needs to traverse the network is paging from the office or reverse paging for emergencies from each classroom. But every space is completely independent from an operational standpoint and just receives signals, audio signals between the spaces. This really helps with reliability as well, because if there's a problem in classroom 2, every other classroom has no knowledge of that and is completely fine and unaffected, unlike a centralized point of failure that you might have with a server and equipment rack. So Cognio supports distributed processing as well, and this means the ability to share processing for a single space across multiple devices. What does that look like? Well, let's again look to how you handle it today. You need to increase the processing in a space, in a room. In today's world, you have to replace one processor with a bigger processor. And this could be okay if it happens at design time, but what if it's at an upgrade? and you need to simply replace one core for another core. That's very inefficient and can be very costly. Well, with Cognio, the distributed processing model allows you to scale by adding more Cognio products. Simply add another touchscreen or any other Cognio product that adds value to that particular space, and you have more processing that you need without having to throw away existing products. And it also delivers more capabilities that the user will benefit from. In this case, another touchscreen or more I/O instead of replacing one black box in a closet for a bigger black box. And distributed, excuse me, distributed processing also refers to the ability to separate processing from multiple spaces onto a single device. And this is incredibly powerful. So Cognio supports multiple independent spaces on one device in one site file. So instead of having to manage multiple site files for each space and try to connect them together, you can have a single site file with multiple independent spaces that can pass audio between them, pass control between them, but are distinctly independent from a design standpoint, and most importantly, independent from a runtime standpoint. So if room one and room three are online and you need to do some work on room two, you can simply take room two offline, push some updates, do testing, iterate, replace a product, whatever the reason might be. But room one and room three are still online, passing audio. They have no change in functionality, even though all three rooms are being run on a single Cognio DSP. And then when you're done, bring room two back online with the final design, and everything is just as it was, again, without any interruptions. So this is incredibly valuable in applications like schools, casinos, house of worship. Heck, every application will benefit from the ability to treat each space independently, but still be able to run them on the same device if that is what is needed. So Cognio's distributed and scalable benefits at the biggest end allow you to have new solutions, new ways to solve problems that you couldn't do before. It gives you, as an integrator or a consultant, flexibility like you never had before. It generally results in less hardware and lower cost. It generally is easier to upgrade when more is needed because you're just adding to a system instead of replacing. You generally have fewer Dante channels traversing the network, and you can treat these large systems as smaller, self contained signal flows, allowing you to swap products without losing the whole system. And all of this is inherently more fault tolerant than a single source of failure with a one large DSP. So let's talk about our launch ecosystem. Give me a second, just have a quick sip of tea. All right, I'm back. So for the launch ecosystem, we have two categories of smart products and smart controllers: our traditional processors and the new category of controllers. Our existing expanders and endpoints are not yet smart enabled, but that is most definitely something on our roadmap. So let's focus on these new categories of products. Now, we'll start at the biggest and work our way down, starting with our server product, the Cognio C100. This is a smart processing server with up to 384 by 384 channels of Dante, 96 channels of AEC, and 128 channels of audio playback. So this is for applications that still need a very large centralized server for aspects. Think stadiums or very large buildings where it doesn't make as much sense to have parts of the architecture distributed across multiple products. Again, with Cognio, you can mix and match the combinations and find the right size processors for each application. But like all Cognio products, it supports 96K signal processing. In this case, it's rack mountable with a web server and all of our control capabilities. And as a server built for enterprise, it has dual redundant power supplies as well. Next, we step down into the Cognio C20. This is a smart processor that is only 1/3 U in rack size, but is incredibly powerful still. 64 by 64 Dante, lots of AEC, 32 channels of media playback, 8 channels of record, as well as USB-C audio bridging. Again, 96K of signal processing, and it's very flexible to mount with VESA, surface, or rack mount capable for this product. It can be powered by DC, and it's very flexible powering with 12 volt to 28 volt operation. Now, with Cognio, we have a very small DSP that really is a new category of product. This only makes sense in a distributed fashion where you can have multiple DSPs in the same site file. So the C10 has 16 channels of Dante, 2 channels of AAC, and 2x2 USB audio bridging, making it perfect for a smaller or medium-sized room. But it's incredibly compact. Only 1/4 U rack size, base mount, surface mount, fits behind a TV. It's perfect in that application. It's very flexible on its power too, as it can be powered by PoE plus or DC. And when you're powering it by DC, it can support 50 watts of USB-C charging. Now, we talked about before, but let me give you the details about our processing touchscreens. This is our TC series. It's based upon our existing T series touchscreens, but with an upgraded processor, allowing you to do more with that touchscreen. So, full DSP and a control processor built in with up to 16 by 16 Dante. It can be mounted in a 2-gang wall mount or desk mount. And we have 3 different form factors, 5, 7, and 10-inch, just differing only on the screen size. Its processing and other capabilities are all identical. So it's about how much control built in do you need with that system. And it is powered by PoE plus. Now, the last smart product is our W3C. Now, this is a smart remote, and it doesn't have enough processing to do audio processing, but it is a full control processor with built-in web server, ability to run drivers and third-party control. So this is incredibly useful in a small huddle room space where you might, excuse me, pardon me. So as I was saying, the W3C is great in huddle spaces where you would have appliances being used for all of the processing. You might have a sound bar or a TV, but you still want general control over the whole space. I still want one button recall of various presets and configurations. I still want a wall controlled volume. The W3C can provide that without any other hardware. So it's an incredibly inexpensive control processor with remote built in. Now, as I said, at launch, our endpoints are not yet smart. So we call these managed devices. And this allows you to have full Dante routing, full Dante control processing, but you don't have additional DSP added with these products yet. But they are very flexible, and our endpoints, especially our wall mounted XLR and Bluetooth, really represent the best in class in these products. And I invite you to look more into them on our website. So, speaking about control, Cognio utilizes our existing huge library of third-party drivers. For those who don't know, we've really been contributing and growing this driver library over the past set of years, and we really have a very complete picture of drivers. They're very easy to download from our website and just drag in and install into a design. All of these will be ported to the new Cognio. And at this point, if we don't already have a driver you need, it's really easy for us to work with you to create them. We have a dedicated team of pro services that can work with you to make a design. So please, if there's something you need for a design, reach out. We'd love to partner together to get that new driver created. As I said, our drivers are easily to design and easy to port from Composer or QSys. They're written in Lua, so if you have any experience with Lua, you'll be right at home. We have a very consistent driver model for Dante and non-Dante devices, making it really easy to learn one way to create drivers and have it work for all products out there. And we have, for those who've written our Lua drivers in the past, a bunch of new Lua scripting capabilities in Cognio that are upgrades from our Composer driver model. And we have control from all the common protocols that you would expect, whether it's physical like GPIO, serial IR, or IP-based UDP, TCP, HTTP, SSH. Our scripts and drivers can access all of these, and we can control Cognio products by JSON RPC via TCP. And this means not only can you control our DSPs, but again, with the Cognio operating system, every product can be directly controlled with JSON RPC, like a Bluetooth endpoint or even a touchscreen. So really flexible control. And last, but certainly not least, when we're talking about platform, is security. Dante is a modern platform from the beginning with modern security practices designed in from the beginning. So we have default end-to-end encryption on all of our communication protocols. This is validated with TLS using certificates. And if you want to utilize encrypted Dante, you of course can with Dante Director or Domain Manager. We utilize encrypted disk images, secure boot, signed firmware, secure FTP to transfer those updates in site file. Everything is secure and encrypted where it needs to be. And we have strong access limits, locking down all the most common threat vectors like Telnet or FTP. Those are simply shut down and not available as access points in Cognio. So that is the platform. Let's talk more about the software. I'm going to take a moment to mute myself as I change some screens so we can dive into the control and design software design ops. Alrighty, now we should all be seeing the Cognio design ops software. And again, this is just an overview. I'm going to let you know kind of how it works and touch on all of the key concepts, but this isn't a training and this certainly isn't a deep dive. So we'll have time for questions again at the end. I see lots of people taking advantage of that Q&A window. Keep typing those in if you have questions. And then, as I mentioned, there's another webinar coming up with a deep dive into the software. Alrighty. So the main view starts with what we call site view. And this starts with the ability to add a space. And this is very different from virtually every other software out there where you start by thinking about what hardware you're using. Not in Cognio, you start with the spaces. So I can have multiple spaces within a site file. So I'm just going to add 3 here. And these spaces can be used for any organizational need, but most commonly is to have them be represented of rooms or physical spaces. So if we want to do a site that represents that school we were working on, excuse me, I could call this first space the office, and the second space might be the gym, and the third space be our classroom, the first of many classrooms. Now we can give spaces colors just to help identify them. And each space is completely independent from a signal flow standpoint. So if I double click on each space, I can see the office, the gym, the classroom, and each of these spaces has its own signal flow. But audio can be transferred between each space. Control can be transferred between each space. I can have touchscreens or remotes that control parameters in any and all spaces. So the spaces have control and audio transferring between them, but they are independent from a design. And as I mentioned before, they're independent from an online offline status. Now, right now, I don't have any hardware in my system. I'm in a isolated network here for presentation purposes, so I don't have any hardware, but you can do a huge amount offline. It starts by the fact that you'll notice Cognio spaces don't actually have a specific piece of hardware. It says unspecified Cognio device. And that's because you can go through the complete design process before having to commit to a piece of hardware, or you can change your mind as you go. So I could have a single C100 server running all of these spaces, or I could have a C20 running the gym because it needs a little more processing. And every other space is going to be a touchscreen. In the office, it's going to be a T10, while on the classroom, they need the smallest, least expensive one, our 5-inch. You have that flexibility to make that decision at the beginning or the end. And each of these spaces, as I said, can be pushed online or offline independently. So when a design is running, I could have a office and gym being operated upon and used for a basketball game and a meeting in the office, while I need to do some changes in the classroom. Well, I can sync the gym and the office, leaving them online, while I can unsync the classroom, make changes, and push those changes without affecting any audio in the office or the gym, even if they're running on the same piece of hardware. So let's look at what we can do in a signal flow. Now, I mentioned we revisited some of the norms with designing DSP signal flows. And we watched a lot of people use lots of different software, and we identified some common slowdowns that we wanted to address. On the left, you'll see the toolkit has changed now to show me all of the modules I can add to a site, or to my signal flow, excuse me. So I'm going to add in an audio input here, and looks kind of normal for now, but the main slowdown we noticed was how much time people spend manually drawing wires. And so we have removed that. And as I drag in that gain, you'll see it automatically connects to the audio input. The importance is the connection. The importance is not you taking the time to click one end and drag it to another. So our automatic wiring, which is now patented, really makes designing systems incredibly fast. So how does it work? Well, if it's on the same row, it automatically connects. That gain has nothing after it, so it's not connecting to anything. If I add an output after, you'll see it makes a connection. If I drop a module right onto a wire, it goes in place and makes the connection. I can replace a module simply by dragging on top. It goes red, and now I've replaced that EQ. I can insert a module, shifting the other module again to the right. I can also dynamically control how many inputs and outputs each module has. So I'm going to add a matrix here and say it is going to have 3 inputs. And I'm just clicking on those plus, and I've added 3 inputs to that matrix. And I could manually drag more inputs there, or I could simply select a group of modules and use the key command to duplicate. And now I've shifted those down, duplicating them, making a 3-input mixer. Now we've improved the workflow and made it even faster to do repetitive designs like this. Usually you're not making 3 channels, you're making 8, 10, 12. Well, let's show you how fast that could be. I'm just going to select a group of cells. Actually, let me start on the first one here. And I'm going to double click on a module, and you see it inserted those modules and shifted the target to the right. So now I can just simply double click, and as fast as I can double click, I can add modules to the system. I double click on the matrix. It's smart and makes a single module with that many inputs and outputs. So let's add our output legs. We want parametric EQ, compressor limiter, and alignment delay. And let's add those audio outputs. And I don't know about you, but that is definitely the fastest I've ever seen outside of Cognio building an 8 input, 8 output mixer. And everything is still dynamic. I can delete modules and that wire will make a connection. And I can edit, even I could add another channel to that matrix. Oops, I clicked and dragged it by mistake. Let me click plus. And now I've added another input to that matrix and I can expand it as needed. Now, the next improvement we made has to do with editing modules. Now, whenever we watch people edit modules, again, whether it's Composer, QSys, or Biamp, what we ended up seeing was people double clicking on a bunch of modules, opening them up, arranging a bunch of small windows, editing those DSP modules like the EQ and compressor, and then closing those up and opening more modules, and then making those edits and closing them again. So you're just opening and closing, managing small windows. It's a pain. There's a faster way. On the right panel in Cognio, we have what we call the modifier panel, which shows you the controls. And so if I just select a single module, it updates to show me the controls for that module. And that's cool. But where it's really fast is you can select multiple modules at once. So I've selected my audio input, my input leg, and you see it shows them all in signal flow order, just like a channel strip. And I can scroll and control and make changes. And now you can edit that channel strip dynamically. And I can do the same on the outputs. Let me just scroll to the right a bit and select the output leg. And now I see that output leg and I can change controls there. And again, see everything in signal flow order. I can even navigate selecting another batch of channels or modules, excuse me. Or I can even use a keyboard shortcut to go up a selection. So as you see, it's highlighting the next row. So this makes it really easy to go leg by leg and make your changes. And you can also select vertically. So if I select all of those delay modules, I see everything in context, all of my alignment delays. I can make a change to one, see how it relates to the other, and I can even hold a shift and make a change. And now all of them are changing relative to one another. This is incredibly powerful, incredibly fast, and unlike anything else out there. With Cognio, you're designing systems faster than ever before, focusing on what matters. Now, there's way more features here, and we're going to dive into these in much more detail in the next software-focused webinar. Let's keep going of our tour and talk about control. So I'm going to go back to my site file here, and in the gym, I'm going to add a control panel group. And a control panel group is a group of control panels. Now, you'll notice the spaces that are using touchscreens actually already started with a control panel group, the T10C and the classroom. And there's a tab at the top that lets me see all of my panels and manage them. And they show me live previews, and we'll see those in a second. So I can add panels to a control panel group. I'm going to add a few more to this gym. And then I can double click on one of them to start to edit it. I'm going to open the toolkit here and show you that in Cognio, you can start with unmapped controls to edit and create your control panel groups. So one of the very first things you're going to want to do is deal with navigation. And we've made that incredibly easy. Because we have the structure of control panel groups, we have this inherent built-in knowledge of panels that relate to one another. So I can just simply add a radio button and say I want that to be used for navigation, say that I want that to be shown on all my panels, and I want that to be an automatic navigation control. And once I make that selection, you'll notice that the control panel group shows me that radio button with the name of each panel. So I can select this first panel and say, this is called home. Now this is my home panel. And I could go back to my all control panel group where I see the updated preview, and I could add another panel. And once I do, you'll see that all of those panels have updated to show me 4 buttons now to navigate between them. And I can add different controls onto each one. I'm just going to add a few random controls just to show. So now when I go to operation mode, I can preview the functionality and navigate between those different panels that I've created. To assign a control, I can simply select the control, go into the function, and say, I want this to be assigned to a parameter, and I want this to be the main gain of that module. You can also directly drag controls from a design into a control panel group. So I'm just going to select this output, which has a fader, and I'm going to go into my mapping mode where I want to assign it to control panel group 1, and I can simply drag it. I see a preview of where I want to drop it, and now it is right on that control panel group. So that allows you through that workflow to add multiple very quickly and easily. Let's delete that for now. And let me just add a few more controls. And let's talk about how do we make these look unique. Having a personality and a unique look and feel is important. And we have decoupled the design of how things look from how they operate. So the function that we just showed is here on the function tab, while the design is here on the design tab. And to start with, you can simply load templates, or excuse me, themes that changes the look of a bunch of controls at once. Actually, I forgot to LED. Let's put that in there too. And I'm just going to select all of these controls and say, let's recall the blue theme, or this dawn theme, or this theme I call neon. And you can see what a huge variety I've been able to achieve. Purple, red. Not very good at making unique names. I just name them after the color. Here's one that reuses the composer look and feel if you really like that. And these themes are not just built in. These are all user creatable in our custom control theme manager. So you can go into a theme and create a new one. So I have a brand new one here, custom control theme, and I can select any control and change it, all without having to use any third-party design software. So let's do some changes here and make our own theme. I want to change the cap style, and I want to make it bigger. I want the fill color to be green. Let's make that cap color a really dark sort of blue, but now I want those highlights to be more of a white. Its thickness, I want it to be a little narrower. I want it to be, do I want it square? No, let's make it more round. And what I really love is this glow. So with just a single slider, you can add glow or drop shadow onto controls. It makes it look really cool. I can add a border. So all of these controls are things that make sense to an AV control system, not controls that make sense in a design software system like Photoshop. And with just a click, you can add common things like scale or up-down buttons. These are obviously things that people add all the time. I can change the size of those, and let's make those utilize this up arrow instead. And I want a readout so I can see the value here. And I'm going to change the readout to be on top instead of on the bottom. And I want that to have a different background color with a much larger font. And I want it to be a monospace font so it looks a little more technical. And let's change the text color to be dark on that light background. you can see what a variety you can achieve. And these can be exported. So if I select that theme, I can export them and import them, share them. And again, these are decoupled from the design. So you can have one person at your company making the look and feel, another making the design, and you can reuse that design from site to site. So if you have a completely different school that you're working on and it has a different theme, you can do the whole layout and then again select everything. I'm just going to hit Control A to really select everything and recall that theme. And now I've, in one touch, completely reskinned everything without the need for CSS, without the need for code, and without the need for external design assets. Now you can absolutely add external assets. Anywhere there's a color, you can replace it with an image. So you can put in custom fader caps and custom fader backgrounds or whatever it might be, custom icons. All of those are at your disposal. And we'll show you just how easy and powerful that is in the next webinar. So once you've designed your control screen, you might be ready to do your install. But we wanted to provide more capabilities of what you can do offline in your site file before you get on site. Time is very expensive. Time is money on site. And if we can push more work to the design phase when it's at your desk, one person working versus on site with lots of people waiting, that is valuable to everyone. And so one of the key values that we have added is the ability to do full offline emulation. And this is not simulation, this is true emulation because every single processor is actually have the ability to run offline when I'm in operation mode. And this is because the core capabilities of that Cognio operating system are actually running in our design software too. So if I turn on operation mode, first of all, let me hide this for a moment and make everything a little bit bigger so we can see this design. Zoom in. And when in operation mode, I can click this button to turn on a signal generator. And I'm going to choose speech. And let's increase that level. And now I can actually patch in a signal generator into any or multiple signals in my design. And if I zoom in a little bit more, you'll see these are live meters. They are bouncing. They are showing me real audio activity. And in fact, I can troubleshoot my system. I see audio going into this matrix, but it's not coming out. There's a problem with my matrix. Let me open it up and go, oh, of course, I didn't actually route it. So let's route input 1 to output 2. And let's route input 6 there to output 4. And if you were looking, as soon as I did that, these meters started to bounce and I have signal going through these. And again, these are real live signals. If I grab this gain and make a level adjustment, we're going to see the effect of that. Starts to clip and it goes red. So you can do gain staging through your system. Again, all offline without needing any hardware. So you can be sure your entire system is line checked and gain staged properly without any hardware at all a year before you're on site. So when you do get on site, if audio's not coming out of that speaker, it's a hardware issue or a wiring issue. It's not the design. Really saving you time and money. One last thing in operation mode, when you are online, you can see what is going on in your system. We have a clean roll up of everything happening in my system. And I can actually see here that my hardware, software, network audio, site, and other, they're all green. They're good. But I'm actually having some communication issues that we set up for this demo. If I select that, this log, which represents the log from all of my software and every single piece of hardware on the network, shows what's going on. And I can troubleshoot that right from the log without having to go and manually check every single device. So for support, If a customer calls, simply go to their site, go to File, pull site from hardware. You'll get the latest site from the hardware. You'll be connected. You'll instantly get a status of all the devices on the system, and you can hopefully see there might be an issue with hardware. You'll select that and troubleshoot the problem immediately. So it makes your troubleshooting, whether it's at commissioning phase or down the road to support a customer, that much easier. Now, that concludes our tour of the Cognio software. Again, there's way more there and lots more capabilities that I'd love to show you, but we'll have more time for that in future webinars. All right, let's close it out. Cognio delivers with its distributed platform architecture, software-driven scalability, our patented design ops workflow that greatly speeds up the ability to design your systems, creating beautiful code-free control screens, and our universal device control. We're really excited for you all to get your hands on Cognio. We're working tirelessly to get this completed, and we'll be releasing it starting at Infocom timeframe. So stay tuned and talk to your sales manager for more issues about availability. So, question about migration. In a big system already installed with Composer, how should migration to new Cognio solution be handled if the client will not change everything at once? Well, quite honestly, Cognio, again, is such a brand new, complete platform that it really is going to have to be designed for Cognio from the beginning. Now, that doesn't mean you can't add to existing systems, but if you do want Cognio, you do need to at least add to an existing system or replace aspects of the existing system. Cognio will not run on our existing Composer DSPs, such as Radius or Edge or Prism or the D100. All of those need the new Cognio operating system to run Cognio. So the way I think about it is look to Cognio to new designs or expanded designs. But from a control standpoint, Cognio can be used to control anything. So thinking about the touchscreens, they could be easily used for controlling existing systems that don't already have an integrated control. So that's another good way to expand and add Cognio to an existing system. All right, next question. In conference rooms here, there are two smart device C10 and TC touch panels in this scenario. Where is the processing happening, the C10 or the T series touch panel? The answer is both. Processing can happen in one, the other, or both. And Cognio software can distribute that with your help. At launch, it's more of a manual process to choose where the distributed processing is happening. I want to choose this space on this touchscreen and this space on this T10. Even if that space is in the same physical room, you can still do that. But we have the platform supports and features down the road that we will be able to automatically distribute across multiple pieces of hardware for a single space. How would we route audio inputs to multiple objects? Yeah, great question. I'll actually switch back to the demo and show that because I think we have a little bit of time there. We'll get into that in more detail again in the next webinar, but I'm going to jump back to the Cognio software and let's talk a little bit about routing. And as I said, there's many things I hadn't yet shown you. So one of those things is multiple outputs. So if I hover over this output one, I can simply see this copy button, which makes a duplicate output. And now I have output 1A and output 1B. I can add space between those. This that's not working. Still not sure. Okay. Anyway, skip that, but you can see I have multiple outputs there. So I can drag that to the right, and now I have multiple outputs from the same signal. But these outputs, you might have noticed, they just say audio output or audio input. They are not corresponding to physical inputs and outputs. We utilize software patching in Dante. excuse me, in Cognio. So I'm actually, just to make things a little simpler, I'm going to make a brand new site here just to make it easier for you to see. It's going to take a second as it's shutting down everything and reopening something new. So with that software patching, you can choose any input to any output. And that doesn't have to be a physical input or output. It can also be an internal signal. That space here, and within that space, let's say this is being run on a C20, just to keep things simple. And I'm going to double click that to open up the processing. And I'm just going to add an input and a gain module and an output. And I'm going to add one more input down here and a meter. And you'll see why in a second. So this audio input, I can hover over it and click this patching button. And now on the left, I see all of my patching sources. I see the USB inputs that I could patch to. So this is a physical input. Dante channels are physical inputs. Or I can see virtual inputs. These are other signals within that design. In this case, there's just one, this output. Now, I don't really want to patch an output back to its input. So let me actually, to show this, I'm going to replace that physical input with the tone generator. And I'm going to patch this input to the audio output. And now if I select that meter, go to my controls, select a module. Now you actually see it right there. So the signal is going from this tone generator into the gain, through the audio output, patch right back to an audio input into that control meter. Now, this isn't very useful other than kind of as a via to transport audio on the same site, but I could have this audio input in another space, and that's how you achieve that. Not going to have enough time to demo that, but this is real live audio again, so I can select the gain and that audio meter. This, and I can adjust that gain. And again, you see that meter change its audio. Again, real live audio processing on my system. So that was a good question. Sorry that took a bit longer. That gives you that answer there about how you do audio routing. Remote monitoring and management. Cognio has our design ops built in. And so if I select this C20 processor, I can actually scroll right here on the bottom, and you can actually see it's not yet implemented. We like to remind ourselves, but we're in the process of implementing that. So you'll be able to select a device and simply add its AV Ops Center credentials, allowing you to claim the device. And we have an AV Ops Center manager that you'll be able to claim everything at once as well. So that's how that will work. See, I think we have time for one more question. Actually, that was all of the ones that are assigned to me. So that means if there's other questions, again, that we haven't got answered yet, as I said, we'll make sure we follow up with you directly and make sure all those questions are answered. We really appreciate your time joining us today. We know everyone is really busy, and so we value your time and appreciate it. And if you need any other questions answered, please reach out to your sales manager or our support department, and we can talk to you and get those answered. So with that, I'm going to say thank you and sign off. And I appreciate everyone's joining us.